I find it odd how one of the most polarizing figures in music history never actually has me coming to him for music these days. This was my initial reaction to seeing Kanye West trending again, because I just know Kanye is one of the few people at his level of fame, at his level of wealth, that is so open and transparent about things that go on in his life. Out of anyone in the entire country that has acquired any kind of wealth, fame, or notoriety, I feel like we know the most about Kanye and the Kardashian family. And a little bit more ironic how the Kardashian family marketing scheme has kind of become the Kanye West marketing scheme. Those points to the side, Kanye West is someone I feel needs an intervention and some kind of help. I don't want to be so condescending as to say that the recent events that we've seen in his campaign are the result of some manic breakdown. I'm not here to confirm whether that is or is not the case, because I'm not a doctor. What I am trying to say is, even if it were not that, and you feel Kanye is just being Kanye, speaking freely, being as consistent as he used to be, the points being brought up in this campaign, in this mini speech that he's giving, still are very concerning. And it's not because some of his points collide with some of mine. It's the lack of awareness and lack of reasoning that he gives to a lot of his core points and values, and why I feel someone so impulsive should be a little bit more thought out and considerate with the things that he says. You're probably assuming that I'm going to go off on the remainder of this video solely talking about the Harriet Tubman point that he was trying to make. See, I was going to do that at first, but my curiosity got the best of me, so I decided to watch the entire segment. Much like how I felt 2 years ago, Kanye West is to me the victim of living in his own echo chamber. The difference is Kanye West has acquired the wealth, he's acquired the means to be in spaces with so many people that won't challenge said opinion, so he just goes out into the world assuming that he's thought through these things well enough to present them to an audience that's preparing to vote. Kanye West speaking so carelessly the way he does is a direct result of his wealth, and I don't think he realizes that even while he's speaking. You having a platform to have a discourse about whatever it is that you want to talk about is the direct result of the wealth that you've acquired. You speaking on topics that you're not even qualified remotely to speak about. So I've got about 10 points that he tried to make, and I'm just going to talk about those. And the things that he said in these points that are concerning to me and are justification for why I've said I feel he needs help. Closer to the beginning portion of the video, this woman in the earlier portion is speaking about how punishment is handled differently in different areas when it comes to schooling. Some kids, they have the police involved, and other kids, they go right back to their classroom a couple hours later. This is a point that Kanye never actually ends up addressing, because I don't think he wants to address the elephant in the room, which is his kids probably aren't going to be victim to the plights that this woman was talking about. The thought that Kanye West, of all people, would be sending his daughter or the other children to a school that would threaten the children with police, I don't even see as a possibility in my mind. But him allowing this woman to speak in the beginning kind of is a little deceptive to me, because it presents the image that this is going to be a discourse arguing points back and forth, when really they're just talking and Kanye gets to decide whether or not he addresses which points. If I were genuinely concerned or wanted to become more aware of someone saying something about something that I really had no information about, I would bring a professional on stage to speak on the behalf of said issue, but in this, it just looks really lazily thrown together, almost as if it were on a whim. Kanye then says the most racist thing that he's heard been said was that he was going to split up the black vote, which from a white liberal point of view, I can understand how racist that seems, because why would people who are older, who are also conservative and black, vote for Kanye over Biden or Trump, unless you're assuming they would be voting for him off the premise of his skin color? So he got a point with me for that one. A point that is immediately taken away by his commentary about Harriet Tubman. He says she didn't really free the slaves, she just had them go work for other white people. As if Harriet Tubman was going to go from freeing slaves to those slaves immediately becoming corporate business owners. He didn't seem to take himself through the common sense stage where you understand that these things progress over the course of generations, not just immediately after one thing happens. The same man who alluded to mental slavery being a choice 2 years ago is now admitting to another version of slavery today. I really hate this pseudo-intellectual thought process that because you work for a company, you are enslaved. I think the freedom to quit working for said establishments is exactly what people like Harriet Tubman was fighting for. Not being owned as property, but Okay, we'll go with Kanye's points. He goes into a rant about black people not having ownership in corporate America and for the most part the entertainment industry. As he continues with this rant though, it seems more self-serving than people-serving, because the longer he speaks on this subject, the more we see how it revolves around people just like him. Considering that the closest black people who would even be eligible for having a stock or ownership in companies like UMG or Adidas would be people with the wealth of a Kanye West, I don't think he's advocating for the average black American when he's going on this rant. Black capitalism is still capitalism, Kanye. And the longer he goes on this rant, I feel like he's running for CEO of one of these companies as opposed to the president. When he can no longer support his points, he goes into these religious outbursts where nothing that he says can be supported by any kind of data or evidence. We're all equal in God's eyes. Some people are controlled by demons. All this at a campaign. He goes as far as to insinuate and compare himself to Moses, saying that him showing up to this campaign is essentially his calling. Which again, to me, begs the question, if you felt this was your calling, did you really need to have a presidential run for it? Couldn't you have done and talked about most of your points under the guise of a Sunday service as opposed to a political run? The next portion of this is probably the most theatrical portion of the entire campaign speech. Kanye speaks on the emotional trauma and guilt associated with almost aborting North, which triggers thoughts of him appreciating his own mother, Donda, which causes Kanye to cry hysterically. And he says all these things to basically get to the point that he's pro-life. Now, while I do feel like this could be thrown under the guise of a bipolar, manic breakdown, I also feel like this could be emotionally disingenuous at the same time, and I feel it's too troubling for people as fans and as spectators of a Kanye West to have the responsibility to pick apart which emotions may be genuine and which ones may be a disorder, when I feel in general he should not be in the position to speak publicly about these things at length. And the fact that he has been able to is the lack of, I feel, care that people in his team and around him have for him. It annoys me how long it took him to get the simple point that I am pro-choice, but I'm also pro-life. Why you can't be both of those things mind boggles me. Why I can't want a child to have the opportunity to have life, but at the same time, I want people to have the choice of whether or not they have one. And while I do understand that there's not really much support for fathers who go through the loss of a child or go through the mental stresses or agony that are associated with whether or not you're going to have a child, I just think the emotional outburst during this point that he was trying to make was pretty lazy. I want him to get help, but I don't want him to talk. I don't want him to speak on these things. This entire speech that Kanye is doing during his campaign sounds like one big thought, but it does not sound like one big plan, which I thought was the basis for having a campaign. The obsession that he has with his stance on life actually gets creepy to the point where Kanye almost alludes to bribing women to have the baby. Women who have kids should be given $50,000, $1 million for having a child. How is this not further incentive to just keep popping them out, which would lead to more complications in taking care of them? Do you really think that finances are the only thing that prevent people from having children, or are the only things that are preventing people from wanting to? A lot of these are very situational, and the fact that Kanye thinks that the only exceptions to these that he needs to talk about are the ones where someone's been forced upon is very short-sighted, and again goes along with my point that I feel he needs more help. It's so strange seeing a man who says he's worth $3 billion go on and on about how money isn't real. I think near the end of the video is where I have like the biggest revelation about why Kanye West is able to do what he's able to do. If no one else watches near the end portion of the video, he gets visibly upset with this young black woman for kind of talking behind his back while he's talking, because Kanye feels like if you're able to speak, you should be free to speak without interruption. Now, while this is a considerate take, it's not a reasonable. And sometimes being interrupted is a good thing because it can prevent you from saying something to further make a fool out of yourself. But if you live in your own echo chamber, you live under the assumption that your thoughts are the only thing that should come out at one time without interruption, and no other thought should be able to come out at the same time to interrupt your thought. They say steel sharpens steel. So apparently that means thoughts can at some point collide. That means sometimes people get interrupted. That means sometimes someone has a point while someone else might be talking. But his response to her speaking behind his back wasn't to let her have the floor more, it was to silence her and say that if you keep speaking while I'm speaking, we can't hear me speak more nonsense. She seemed to want to talk about guns as it pertains to her area, I'm pretty sure. And Kanye goes on this other rant about how fun it is to shoot them. Sometimes you need to be stopped from speaking so you can hear someone tell you, I think you're wrong. Sometimes you accept the fact that I don't know nearly as much about these topics or these situations that affect these people that I'm preaching to right now on a far greater scale than it will ever impact me or the generation that I spawn, to speak over them or to speak at them with such authority. I should let them have the floor and actually speak for majority of the time. You know what? In fact, since I claim to care about these issues so much, what I should do is hire a team of people that I trust, that are certified, that do the research, that put the time and the work in to talk to me about these things so I can better inform myself. In fact, I'll let them even have the floor while I have my platform. But again, Kanye being able to do what Kanye is doing right now is a direct result of the lack of care I feel those around him actually have. Because Kanye is far too large of an artist right now to be threatened with deplatforming, to be threatened with silencing. And it's that same power that separates him from causes he claims to be fighting for. When I say help, I don't mean the term help in just a condescending, oh, just give him a bunch of pills kind of way. I mean help in being honest with him. I mean help in allowing him to understand that other people's voices may take priority over his own. Because I don't believe this is a result of just a manic breakdown. I believe it's the result of enabling behavior that has never been checked and instead coddled to a point where someone as big and with a platform as large as he has can irresponsibly go out and just spew nonsense for an hour straight and have hundreds of people listening and thousands of people watching without the threat of financial fallout or mental reevaluation. Kanye at one point during this speech says that I don't even care about being president. So why are you talking to me? The point of you saying that you're going to run is for you to give people, and even if you don't, for you to give people the impression that you are fighting for what it is that they want, taking their arguments, their desires, and their worries to the powers that be. But if you say you don't care about winning, you're saying you don't care about the issue. In which case, why are you running if it's not self-serving? I don't want Kanye to get help just for Kanye. I want Kanye to get help so he can stop being a distraction. Because at the end of the day, I would hate to see a headline that something happened to Kanye West at the age that he is, because he's still very young. But I'm more upset with what he's taking attention away from as opposed to the things he's actually doing and saying. And you'd think a person that claims to fight on the behalf of the people would be aware of how big he is, and he wouldn't say such uninformed, such ignorant shit on a consistent basis that constantly takes light away from shit that affects people he claims to be fighting for. That's all I'm saying. It seemed artists like a J. Cole and like a Kendrick Lamar were aware of that when they were marching for George Floyd, that they shouldn't make their appearance so large to the point where they take away from the overall point, as opposed to making it more about them and their worries and things that they face. I don't say Kanye needs help because I'm disabling people with bipolar. I say he needs help because as a person outside of his diagnosis, he seems far too narcissistic to ever talk about these issues with the betterment of the people in mind. This entire fucking speech was about him. Why shouldn't women have abortions? Oh, because I felt really bad when I thought my wife was gonna get one, so you shouldn't either. Why do I feel Harriet Tubman didn't really free people? Well, because I have a hurdle that I gotta get through at Adidas, or I want to get in at this company and this company, and I can't do so until they acknowledge me. Why can't this young black woman speak behind my back and me address her and get to my points at the same time? Because my voice, regardless of the overall point, is the most important thing about this moment. Let's not get into the perception that white liberals have about black voters. No, let's make what they said about me the focal point of what I'm trying to say. So if you have any kind of mental disorder or mental diagnosis, I'm not putting you down. I don't group you with Kanye. I'm not putting you in the same room or ballpark with him. I think outside of whatever he's got going on mentally, he also needs a reevaluation just as a human being. And that's all I really got. Y'all can talk about it in the comment section down below and let me know how you feel about it. But this is really what I took away from it. I didn't learn much of anything new, and I kind of wish I got my time back that I spent watching that entire campaign speech. And I'm out. Peace.